Whether you feel stuck in your career, your relationship, your friendships, your habits, your overall life, it can feel hopeless. It can feel confusing. It can feel really, really frustrating. In my over 400 conversations with experts on this podcast, the topic of feeling stuck or how to make the right decision or how to get out of a slump comes up so often. So I decided to put together the ultimate Unstuck toolkit, which covers everything you need from all angles: neuroscience, behavioral patterns, relationship patterns, to help you gain motivation, clarity, and finally feel like you are able to move forward. Welcome to the Liz Moody podcast, where we share actual, tangible solutions to your real problems so you can feel as good as possible every single day. We are not going to tell you you can do it. We're going to tell you exactly how. Up first, you're going to hear from NYU professor and best-selling author of Becoming You, Susie Welch, who shares her famous decision-making technique to help us gain clarity when we don't know what to do or which way to go next. She also gives specific tips for when you feel stuck in a job and how to know when to jump ship. There's almost like a shaking of all of us that you're doing a little bit, where you're like, you can't have it all. You need to figure out what matters to you. And you say this a few times in your book, the Mary Oliver quote, this is your one wild and precious life. Right. What are you going to do with it? Yeah. Because if you aren't making these choices are still happening.
Well, they'll make themselves.
They will make themselves.
They'll make themselves. You'll just not make the decision. And when we don't make decisions, they make themselves, and usually in a very ugly way.
Yeah.
Okay.
This feels like a good opportunity for you to share your very famous decision-making technique. Can you tell us about the 10-10-10 technique?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. Look, 10-10-10 is a decision-making technique that I came to because I was at rock bottom. I was trying to do it all at the same time. I had 4 little children. This is like 1995. I had 4 little children. My husband was 1 foot out the door, and I was working full-time, and I had not gotten clear with myself about my values or how I want to live, and I was just trying to do it all at the same time. And I ended up going to give a speech in Hawaii, and I brought 2 of my children with me, and it ended in an epic fail with the kids breaking out of a hula dancing class where I had warehoused them and running up on stage while I was giving the speech. And they didn't clap, and they didn't laugh, and they just got up and walked out of the speech. And I was left there, up there on the stage in my bow shirt and my little gray suit with my kids clutching at my legs thinking, I can't do this. I can't. And I came up with this idea that I was going to start living my life one decision at a time. I just had to slow this freaking locomotive down. And instead of like riding on the back of the locomotive and holding on by my fingernails, I was just going to start to understand life with a totally different construct, which was that everything in life was one decision after another. And instead of letting the decisions just make themselves, I was going to stop every time there was a decision. I was going to say to myself, literally, what are my options and what are the consequences of those options in the immediate future right now? What are the consequences of those options? All of them, 2 of them, 3, how many options there were. In the foreseeable future, 10 months, okay? What are the consequences of those options if I was to try to build the life I really want? That's the 10-year thing. And then you really do a data dump. I mean, you're just like dumping data. You're really looking at the pros and the cons. You're not sort of picking out on one piece of data that you really, really want to listen to, or the last piece of data that you heard, because these are all decision-making biases that we give more weight to the last piece of data that we got. And you just put this huge data dump either in your head or on a piece of paper, and then you compare it to your values. And then the decision, it usually just rises up like the sun and announces itself. It's very rare at that point that you're sitting there staring at it saying, I don't know what to do. Because once you see all the data and you know your values, that's why you have to know your values, the decision makes itself. That is why the beauty of knowing your values, then you can start deploying 10-10-10 every single time you've got a hard decision about work and family or about fun and anxiety. And all these different things, you can just say, let's just 10-10-10 it. My kids say it to me all the time. I raised my kids using it. Once I started using it, I put my life back together again using it.
And that's 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years.
Look, honestly, it could be 5 minutes, 7 months, 30 years, whatever. But it's a proxy for saying, what are the impacts immediately, like right now? And that's usually how we make our decisions. The foreseeable future we don't usually think about, but we should. And then the future I want to create.
Yeah. And that's where some of the choices that we're making right now often, they do favor the present. And so it is like, what does this look like in 10 years in our lives? Okay. How do we know if we're at a good enough job and we should just hang out there and it'll be fine and we have a lot of what we need and we can work on the other parts of our lives, or if there's something better out there and we should take this leap?
Yeah, the job usually tells you. If you're like in a job that's pretty good, should I stick it out or should I bust out, right? This is the velvet coffin at work, as I call it. This is when you're in a comfortable job and the lid is kind of closing on you. And you think, if I don't get out now, I'm never going to get out. And some people stay in and some people bust out. And what I ask people to do in that situation is to imagine yourself staying in the velvet coffin and until the end. Let the lid close. How do you feel? And some people say, it was worth it because it accommodated all the people who loved me and who I loved. And to bust out would have hurt too many people. And then you should stay. But if there's a piece of you and you answer that question, what would make me cry on my 85th birthday? And it was like, I never wrote the book. I never started the company. I never trusted myself enough to do the thing I felt I was born to do. You got to take a heel of your hand and you got to shove that lid open.
If we identify a job that we want that we aren't necessarily qualified for, what should be our next step?
This happens. You do this whole process and then you say, oh, okay, it's clear I need to be an emergency room doctor, okay? And you don't have any of those qualifications. Then I would use 10-10-10. I would actually use a decision-making system because, of course, there are situations where you're going to find a job you have not prepared for, you don't have the credentials for. I recently did this with the whole process with somebody who it was clear that his purpose was working in international relations, and he was a banker. And he knew he had to go back to school because to go into international relations, and a lot of times you don't need a master's, you need a PhD. And then we had to make a decision around his values, like how much did achievement matter to him? How much did money matter to him? How much did belonging matter? We looked at his values and they were sort of the tipping point, and he decided to go for it. And he's going back to square one because it mattered to him so much to live that life and to have that identity. But you may decide, okay, oops, I want to be an emergency room doctor. I'm often watching these TV shows that have doctors in them. And I think to myself, I could have been a doctor. I would have really dug being a doctor.
Oh my God, I watch those same shows and I'm like, thank God somebody else is willing to do
You know,
this.
I know, I agree. And then they show blood and I was like, I could have never done this. But I think, sometimes I think as a mind game, I think, what if when I went back to teach at NYU, what if I had said to myself at that moment, you know what, I've got this, like these last 20, 30 years, maybe more, please God. But, I've got those years left. I want to go scratch that itch. I want to be a doctor. Then you have to make the decision about how badly you want it and how you would feel if you didn't do it. And you can't look away. You got to look right into it.
Next up is neuroscientist Nicole Vignola sharing how we can rewire our brain to release new chemicals, different chemicals, so that we can feel less stuck. Okay, so talk to us about not beating yourself up.
We have this tendency to have this negativity bias, but it doesn't change behavior. We know that because every time you had a cigarette and then beat yourself up about it, you would stop the habit right there and then. But we don't. It just keeps us stuck. If you stop beating yourself up about it and you start looking at the positives, I'll use this as an example. If you're somebody that smokes a pack a day, that's 20 cigarettes. Let's say you cut down to 1 cigarette a day. What is likely to happen is you're going to say, well, I'm still smoking, and you're still going to beat yourself up about that 1 cigarette, but you're going to overlook the fact that you're now smoking 19 cigarettes less every single day. That's 530 cigarettes in a month. But you're still going to say, well, I'm still smoking, and then beat yourself up about that. And that keeps us stuck. Whereas if we shift that into okay, I'm really proud of myself. I only smoke 1 cigarette a day now versus 19. That's going to motivate you to want to smoke even less because it's driving you to make yourself feel better about yourself. So you go, okay, well, I know that it feels really good when I'm kind to myself. So tomorrow I'm not going to smoke at all. And then you're going to focus on that. I didn't smoke today. Maybe I'll smoke tomorrow and that's fine. But then when you do, you go, okay, but I didn't smoke the day before. And then again, it's this positive reinforcement of I'm working towards my goal. I'm not there yet. It doesn't happen overnight. In the same way that you didn't start smoking 20 a day, it takes time for you to become accustomed to smoking that much.
Wait, so beating yourself up for the 1 cigarette a day keeps you stuck, you said.
Yeah.
That's because your brain is like, well, I already gave up 19 and you're not even rewarding me for this. So why would you reward me for an additional 1?
Yeah, to some degree, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So switching the thought to focus on the progress that you have
Yes.
made not only will feel better in the moment, but it will technically, from a neurological perspective, motivate you more to continue to make progress.
Yes, because when we feel good, our brain releases dopamine, especially if we start to make gratitude lists and unexpected reward of, hey, actually, Liz, you've had a great day. Nick, you did fantastic. That's an unexpected reward where you're deciding to be kind to yourself. And so that dopamine, because dopamine is part of putting you in pursuit of reward, it's a reward-based learning mechanism that tells you you felt good when you did this. Let's do that again. We feel good when we don't smoke. We feel good when we say no to the extra cake. We feel good when we go for a run. Let's continue to do that. Versus, I didn't go to the gym today, so I'm just going to beat myself up about it. Because that's a form of trying to gain control of the situation.
That's so interesting. Nobody's ever put it like that to me, that this is how you're trying to keep a little bit of control.
Exactly.
Are there any other neuroscience hacks for happiness or calm or just feeling good on a day-to-day basis that you could share with us?
One of the happiness hacks that I love doing is, so you know how we have this negativity spiral where if you start paying attention to all the negative things in your life, you start going into this negativity bias. The opposite is true. So when you start making a list of all the things that you're grateful for, that can hack you or hack your systems, that you go into a state of bliss where you're like, actually, everything's really great. You start smiling at someone, they smile back. You're like, that feels great. Everything is uplifted. So doing that on a regular basis. When you're feeling low, try it.
I love that. Next, I chat with the famous therapist, Katie Morton, who shares advice for when you feel paralyzed by what you should do and gives us tips on how to get yourself to do that hard thing that you've been avoiding.
We're supposed to get married, we're supposed to have kids, we're supposed to own a home, we're supposed to do all these things. But I'm like, are we? Is that really what it means? What if we're just better people? What if we're nicer to each other?
What would you say to somebody who feels stuck in a lot of those shoulds, whether they're coming from society or their families or their friends? What would you say to somebody who wants to break free from those shoulds but can't figure out how?
Take some time and consider what your values are. This is something that I did, and I still try to do it every year. I'm going to do it again here in a few weeks, because we want to make sure that the choices we're making are aligned with our values. When we act out of alignment, when we do things that aren't aligned with our values, we end up with a life we don't want. I think that's when we feel like we're unhappy. People wake up at 40 or 50 or 60 and are like, oh my God, what happened to my life? Or I don't even like people in marriages. I don't even like this person. Why am I with them? And so if you feel like, hey, I'm stuck. I feel like there's a lot of shoulds, people telling me what I need to do. Let's stop the noise. We're so afraid to get quiet with ourselves. There's so many distractions. It's so easy to get on your phone, scroll through social media. Take a quiet minute, maybe get up 10 minutes earlier in the morning and just sit with yourself. What are your goals for that? And what do you want? And are those aligned with the values that you have? And then if you feel like the shoulds are getting too loud, let's make a little chart, like a table in the middle, shoulds that are coming from me and shoulds that are coming from other people. So that
it can be so hard to extricate them after a certain point, though. Like our parents' voice starts to sound like our voice after enough time.
Yes. And that's where it can get complicated. But if we quiet down, if we take our time, I think we can tease it out. And it's okay if maybe a middle column of, I don't know where this came from. But I think if you get quiet and you listen, you'll feel it. For me, when I try to make a choice that is not what I want, I will ask everybody for their feedback. And it's because I don't feel like I don't have the courage I need to say that this is my choice.
Oh, that's so interesting.
I look for other people, hoping they'll validate so that then I can be like, yes, that's what I want. But if they don't, then I keep going and I keep asking. And those are the like quote unquote decisions that keep me up at night, but they don't keep me up at night because I don't know what I want. They keep me up at night because I don't have the courage to make that decision right now.
Interesting. I also wonder if you write down like, I should do this, and you just sit with that sentence for a second, if your brain will kind of feed to like, when did I hear this for the first time? And you'll begin to untangle like where that came from. Oh my God, my second grade teacher was the one who actually told me this and told me I wouldn't be good enough unless I acted like this. And
yeah, I think so. And also you can feel it like when you're writing it, do you know when you're writing things that feel exciting and real? Like if you're trying to manifest something, let's say, and you're like, this year is going to be my best year ever.
Yeah.
It feels very easy. It feels very light. It's exciting. When you write things that you don't really want, like, oh, I should have a baby. If for me, that just it's incongruent. Like it doesn't feel good. So just notice, does it feel easy and light and exciting to write it? Does it feel a little rebellious? Or does it feel like it's just not part of you?
this begs the question, how do we know when something is a hard thing that we should do and when something is a hard thing for a reason? And that's a sign that we shouldn't be going after that thing. Maybe it's unrealistic. Maybe it's not a good use of time. Maybe it's not aligned with our values. But like, how do we know when it's a hard thing in a good way versus a bad way?
Going back to values and like goals, as long as it's moving us in that direction, there'll be hard things. And there's going to be things you have to do that, like, you create a podcast. That's hard. It's a lot of work. Also, you have to figure out how to interview people. That's a lot of work. But you do those things. You push through. We challenge ourselves all the time. Want to change behavior. I'm going to work out more. You figured out how to do that. So those are things that we're moving that are towards your values, things you want to do, things you want to create, who you want to be. And if we've spent that time kind of figuring out where those messages are coming from, then I think we can already tell which things are the hard things we should do. Like, I want to be a lawyer. Okay, we're going to have to go to law school. You have to pass the bar. Those are hard things. Or my family's always been in publishing. So I should be a publisher, but it feels like moving through sludge and I don't really enjoy it. And you know what I mean? It's not aligned. It's one of those statements that you would feel that you should do that's not coming from you. And so I think in general, that should help tease out a lot of it. But when it comes to like behaviors, if we go back to like people pleasing, perfectionism, I think the behaviors that we'll want to change are the ones that keep tripping us up. I'm stressed. I feel anxious. I can't sleep. I'm frustrated. Our body will tell us, our environment, our emotions, our mood will tell us when something's not right.
It's so interesting. I was talking to my husband recently because maybe a year and a half ago, I did all these blood panels and they basically came back with like, your stress is killing you in a number of different ways. And I made all these changes in my life, but I was like, I'm obviously not going to do anything about the stress. Like nobody can do anything about that. That's just like part of life. And a year and a half later, I'm like, wait, why was I ignoring the largest alarm bell? And I started to make some real changes and be like, I will be better at my job, better at my relationships if I tackle this underlying thing of stress. But for some reason, I'd been like, that's too crazy. And the biggest alarm bell is like, well, we all have to live with stress, right? Like that's silly. And we do to a certain extent, but the soup of stress that I was stewing in on a daily basis wasn't serving me in any way. And yet I was clinging to it for such a long time and acting like it was an impossibility to change it. And I think a lot of us do that where these very negative feelings, to your point earlier, start to feel comfortable. It starts to feel like this is the normal way of living and changing it feels impossible until, I don't know, it doesn't. I'm curious, almost like, I don't know what caused that wake-up call for me. Is there something that you think would cause a wake-up call like that for somebody else listening?
Yeah, I mean, because your experience is very similar to mine. I feel like maybe we're very similar in this way. It wasn't really about the stress or not stress. It was like your identity. Because for me, at least, I can tell you that like I wrap up a lot of my worth in my ability to do things for people, in my productivity. And realizing that that's where my worth came from was huge, was vital to me making good, better changes, better choices. Because I've heard stuff like that too. Like, well, you're so stressed out and you're burnt out. That's going to be the most unhealthy thing for you. And I'm like, everybody's stressed out. I can't not be stressed. And it's like,
I'll do all the other stuff. Like, that's fine. But stress is just like a fact of life. It's a fact of life.
Yep. I'll stretch. I'll do some yoga. I'll light some candles. Yeah. We're like, I'll do all the things. But it wasn't actually about that. It was about what it would mean for me as a person internally to not have that be my identifier, like my label. And that felt again, I didn't have the courage at the time, and maybe you didn't either, to be like, I can let go of some of this. I don't know if it's women or if it's just my personality, but I always feel like in order to be successful, you have to hustle for it. You have to like really grind. And I think the better question would be like, what do I believe this says about me? And if you can answer that, or at least be curious, not judgmental about that, then you can figure out how to make the change. Because that's where my aha moment was too, where I was like, actually, I don't think that that's the only way I can be successful. I don't know why that's what I have told myself, and like, I am enough as I am.
Now you're going to hear from me. I share simple science-backed hacks for when your burnout or lack of motivation is making you stuck, including a very quick tool to get you into creative solution mode. One of the top ways to deal with burnout is to do an energy audit of the people that you spend the majority of your time with. This can be at work, this can be at home, this can be in your social time. Just literally write down all of the people that you encounter throughout your week and then take note of how you feel after you spend time with them. This can be hugely eye-opening for friendships and even for family, and it can be a really great sign that boundaries need to be drawn. Maybe you don't need to see that friend every single week. Maybe you don't need to talk to your mom on the phone every day. At work, too, we often have more power than we think. We can set boundaries, if possible, about after-hours communication, or we can try to create physical distance between ourselves and our coworkers. I had a coworker in one of my offices who was hugely draining to my energy, and when I was feeling depleted, I would consciously work in one of the conference rooms to get more space. Instead of thinking there is no solution to this, try thinking, if I assume there's definitely a solution to this, what would that solution be? This is one of my favorite tips for when we are feeling stuck in general, by the way. Anytime you are feeling stuck, start with the assumption that you have 3 options. Suspend your disbelief and just say, okay, I have 3 options here. What are they? Doing this takes our brain out of that negativity mode where we come up with all of the reasons why we can't do something, why the changes that we want aren't available to us. And it puts it into problem-solving mode, into creative solution mode. And if you can't think of anything, and this is a really hot tip, first do a stress-relieving activity. Anything that relieves stress for you. It can be reading a book. You can take a walk. You can do a quick meditation practice. But when we are in states of stress, the part of our brain that's responsible for creative problem solving literally goes offline. This is probably one of my most used takeaways from interviewing doctors on the podcast. Literally, your executive control area essentially turns off because your brain thinks that you are in survival mode. It doesn't want you sitting around and pondering interesting ideas. It wants you to run. One of the biggest mistakes that so many of us make is feeling stressed, feeling overwhelmed, and then saying, I don't like how I feel right now. And then we try to come up with solutions. But since we are stressed, we can't come up with any solutions since that part of our brain is turned off. So we think there aren't any, and then we keep living our lives the same way. When in fact, we need to do something to decrease our stress, to activate that problem-solving part of our brain, to have it produce the solutions that we are looking for. So that is just a hot tip for life. Do not try to make decisions or problem solve when you are stressed. First, intentionally decrease your stress levels and then ask yourself, should I quit this job? Should I break up with this person? What do I need to do differently in my life to feel differently? So, coming back to the people that we surround ourselves with. I think often, especially with work, we're like, this is just the way that it is. There is no solution. So I would encourage you, try to get yourself first into a lower stress state and then ask yourself, if there were 3 options here, what would they be? Could they be moving to a different team? Could they be talking to your boss about the way that you would like to be communicated with? Could an option even be looking for a different job if the job that you're at is making your life feel terrible? I don't know your life. I don't know your situation. But if we start from the assumption that there are 3 options, well, I would love to see where that takes you. And in general, just really being aware that people can be as big of energy drains as tasks are, and protecting your energy in that way accordingly. Next up, best-selling author Rafi Grinberg is sharing wisdom on reframing your relationship with the life that you feel stuck in. Are there any other life hacks, habits, like quick things that we can do that you feel like would make a huge difference in people's lives and not enough people are doing?
I think one of them is to reframe how you view obligation, should statements, things like that. I think we are very quick to use the word out loud, but also in our heads or in our self-talk of like, I have to do this. So for example, like my car's a flat tire, I have to take to get the tire replaced. Or even like, I'm in a relationship, I can't sleep with this other person I'm attracted to. And I think it's actually not true. You can, in theory, do anything that you want to do within the confines of like natural limits. It's just that you choose not to because you have certain values. So I don't have to go fix my car. I choose to go get my car fixed because I want to drive it. And the costs and the time of getting it fixed are outweighed by all the benefits I get from continuing to drive. Or I choose not to cheat on my partner because I really value our relationship and it's way more important to me than whatever momentary pleasure I could get from this other thing. And every single thing that we're doing in life is actually a choice within the confines of the rules of the world. You can't change the rules of the world, but within those confines, everything is a choice.
Do it for, I have to go to this job that I hate because like I have to make money to eat and support my family, et cetera.
I guess you don't have to on 2 different levels. One is you could find a different job. For some people, it's harder than other people. I recognize everything we've talked about with career flexibility might be really difficult for certain people who are kind of locked into a situation where they have a subsistence sort of thing where they have to earn enough to survive. That's definitely true. So assuming you can't do that, you still don't have to go to work. You could lose your job. You could not have enough money to eat. You could choose to just eat less. You could choose to starve to death. Like all those things are options that you have. And so you've decided that you have your own hierarchy of values. Like having enough food to eat is more important to me than not having to, go to this job that I hate every day. And people's circumstances are certainly different. Some people are worse off than others, and it sucks, and there's no way around that. But within the circumstances you have, everything you're doing is a choice.
I love that, especially with our relationships, our health habits, so many things. It's like I choose to go to the gym, not I have to go to the gym. I've chosen this partner, so this is how this is playing out in my life. I'm choosing to hang out with these friends. I know a lot of people are in toxic friendships, and they're like, oh, I have to go hang out with Sally again. And it's like, well, you're choosing to hang out with Sally.
Yeah, you don't have to. And if you do choose to, then it's a choice. You're choosing that whatever benefit you get from that, and the benefit might even be helping this person, Sally, by being around them because they need companionship, is more important to you than whatever you're losing from that interaction.
Oh, I love
take it
that.
one step further?
Yeah.
For the more advanced listeners out there, I guess one step further would not only be saying, I choose to do it, but I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful to go to this job that I hate because it's giving me enough money to eat. And if I didn't have this job, I wouldn't be able to afford to eat. If I could, then I would go do that other job instead. Similarly, I'm grateful, for the opportunity, to be in this relationship, even though it's closing off all these doors. I guess ties back to what we said earlier. Closing off those doors is actually a good thing that makes our relationship better.
I would also say another advanced step is you're finding out about your own values as you're doing this. As you're making these choices are showing you things about your own values that might not even be evident to yourself.
And you can certainly change your mind. And actually, to your earliest question about how you go through this exercise of figuring out what you value, a lot of it is just through the real world experience of facing these choices. Once you realize these things are choices, you might realize, actually, I don't want to make this choice anymore. I want to change. I want to sell my car. I don't want to take it to the repair shop. Let me just get rid of it because it's more of a pain than it's worth. Another example that I like to give is when you get bills in the mail. So your Wi-Fi bill, your electricity bill. Most people are like, ugh, another bill. It's annoying because you have to lose money and you have to go through the sort of work of paying it. Unless you auto pay, which is nice, you can actually be grateful for it. You're like, this electricity powers my house. I have a refrigerator that keeps my food cold. I don't need an iceman to deliver the ice every day. And it powers a dishwasher, so I don't have to wash dishes, and a washing machine. All these amazing modern conveniences. Paying my electricity bill is the best moment of the month. It's I'm paying for the best luxury that anyone could have ever had.
Now we are hearing from Stanford professors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, who share why our feeling of stuckness might be because we're working on the wrong problem. They also share how to know when a problem is unsolvable versus solvable. I think a lot of the reason that people feel stuck in their lives is they think they're working on the right problem, but they've actually identified the wrong problem. I'm curious if you guys would agree with that, and if so, how you would suggest that maybe we find the right problems in our lives.
Yeah, we definitely say problem finding precedes problem solving. And half the time stuff doesn't work, you're working on the wrong problem. And you want to work on the real problem and a real solvable problem. So if there's a problem you can't solve, that's not actually a problem, it's just a circumstance, and your only chance is to accept it and move on.
Wait, speak more to that, because I think it's so interesting that so many of us spend so much of our lives on problems that are essentially insolvable.
Yes.
And then we're exhausted, we're burnt out, and we don't feel like our life is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, we call those gravity problems and anchor problems. So a gravity problem, we named it that because, I'm 72 and I'm a cyclist, and so I'm 20 pounds heavier than I used to be, which means my bike doesn't work as well anymore. So I go to Bill, Bill, I've got this real problem, this gravity thing, it's screwing up my cycling. Can you help me with this gravity problem? And he goes, no, Dave, I can't. It's just... Gravity's not a problem. It's just gears, reality.
Yeah, get more gears.
So an example of that might be, hey, Dave, I want to be a poet, and you can't make any money being a poet. Can you help me with that problem? Well, no, the fair market value of poetry is a buck. So I'm sorry, that's just true. So when you run into what you called a problem, which is in fact a circumstance, because a problem you think you can solve. And if it's not solvable, it's not a problem, it's a circumstance. So your choice now is to accept it, which gives you the freedom to move on and redefine a different, how can I find a way to make a living in a way that doesn't take so much time that I can still do my poetry in a meaningful way? Not how do I tell the entire capitalistic world that poetry deserves to be paid more for? Good luck with that.
Right.
The whole idea of problem findings, first of all, starts with a solvable problem. And then understanding really what's going on.
How do we identify the right problem so we break through that feeling of feeling stuck?
Go out in the world and talk to people and figure out some stuff that you couldn't figure out on your own. And maybe a prototype experience. Go try something, a little tiny something that gives you the experience of what it is you're wrestling with. Over and over, we find people who are, they're working on problems that you can't solve because it's a gravity problem. I really want to get promoted. I have to get promoted this year, but the company's laying people off and they're not making any more directors. How do I become a director, Bill? Well, the reality is for the next year or so, there aren't going to be any more directors. Liz. So you're going to have to figure out a reframe. And then the big thing, in addition to prototyping, which is the power tool, is the reframe. How do I figure out a different way to think about this problem that opens up the solution space? Instead of banging my head against the thing I can't solve, is there another way to look at it, moving from trying to solve the problem I can't solve to going out and prototyping things that might actually change the problem in a way that becomes more tractable, more open to solutions. And reframing is the other superpower tool.
Okay, can I ask you to apply this to a few problems that I commonly see with listeners?
Sure.
What about I want to meet my life partner, but I cannot find them out there. I'm dating. The people that I'm finding dating aren't the type of people that I want to end up with. But I know I want a life partner. I maybe want kids. I want a family.
We have a thing in the book called the reframing ladder. The problem is, hey, I'm trying to find a life partner. I'm at that stage in life. I'm not interested in dating anymore. I really want to find somebody that I can start a family with, that I can connect with, that I can love deeply. Okay, so then I say, great. And oftentimes the way we try to tackle this is, okay, that's an interesting problem, but it's really big. Let's level up one thing. If you were to find this life partner, Liz, what would you get out of it?
Okay, so I know a lot of friends who say a feeling of family and a partner to have a child with.
I'm looking for the feeling of family, and I want to be around kids. I want to be connected to kids. All right, so we can just stop at one level up in the ladder and turn that into how might I have a better feeling of family and be around kids some more. And then I can prototype, hey, well, I could volunteer at the childcare center down the street to be around kids. I could organize more family events around my family and invite more people in. And so I can't come at the problem directly, because if I'm just walking around going, are you my life partner? Are you my life partner? I'm going to sound a little desperate. It's going to be a little weird. But if I could focus on the experience of family and the experience of children, that would put me in the range of people who might be potential life partners. So again, it's not just go join a club at the Y and see if you bump into somebody. It's intentionally thinking about how could I design the experience of family and children into my life? Because if this works, maybe that'll happen. If it doesn't work, I'll still have family and children in my life. And I can even go up a level and say, if I had family and children in my life, I'd have meaning and purpose for the day. I'd have a meaning and purpose for things that I want to do. And now I can start designing prototypes around that. And somewhere in that process, by the way, just like with jobs, you're going to get the most powerful recommendations for jobs from the loosely connected network. It's not your friends who know, I know somebody who can get you a job, Liz. It's, I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And then that person, because of the loose network connection, has a reason to respond to your request. Hey, I'm looking for a job. In the same way, they've just did a thing where very close friends and very close people that he knows could have referred him to 3 women. He might have had a fun time dating, but he wasn't interested in dating. He's interested in a real relationship. So they knew that. But I'll bet from that group to the next group to the next group out, there's someone in that group that you're going to find interesting. And the other piece is psychologists know that we don't see what we're looking at. We just see what we're looking for. We can walk down the street and we don't even notice stuff because we weren't looking for it. We're on our way to the store and we're just looking to get to the store. So if what I'm looking for is that perfect spouse, again, that perfect solution to my problem, I'm not going to find it because that's sort of the wrong framework. But if I open up my experience, it's not just about looking for the straightforward things. You open up your peripheral vision, look at there's an interesting thing over there. There's some pretty flowers over there, some interesting people here, interesting people there. If you open up what you're looking for, the chance of finding something in all the stuff that's coming at you is much greater.
Part of that is, how do I find the prospective partner who's looking for my prospective partnerness? But their question then is, okay, who am I looking for? And if that person were acting coherently with that way of being in the world, where would they be and what would they be doing? So let's say I really care about social justice. And so I really want to be involved in social justice. And if I want to meet other people who cared about that, could I volunteer and assist them? So I'm going to go do the kind of thing that the kind of people I want to be with are doing. Rather than go solve your problem, go where the solution to your problem might be for other reasons.
Next up, I'm going to share why that stuckness that you feel may be because the things in life that once brought you joy do not anymore because of the dopamine imbalance caused by our phones. Then I'm going to share how to rebalance your dopamine to start finding the spark in life again. Something that I have experienced quite a bit in my own life, and I do not feel like enough people talk about it, which is the life is meh syndrome. You know that feeling where things that you expect to make you happy stop hitting in the same way, like time with your friends, funny movies, beautiful nature. It all just feels kind of meh. This is grounded in real neurochemistry. Our phones are making it so our brains are becoming desensitized to dopamine. Dopamine doesn't care about us having the things that we want. It is about attention seeking and getting. It rewards you for successfully chasing. So you chase on your phone and you get a hit when you find something interesting. And as you see more and more interesting things, you become desensitized and it starts to hit less when something interesting occurs. So you scroll more and more to get that hit again. And then it translates to everyday life. Because of that dopamine depletion, experiences hit less. Everything feels meh because life isn't a constant reward treadmill. Our brain is trying to restore a state of dopamine balance. It's telling us to seek, seek, seek. It doesn't care about the pleasure of an experience. So when you should be enjoying something, you have this drive to find something else. So we end up in this dopamine depleted state, constantly seeking, with nothing ever actually satisfying us or making us feel content. So let's start with that. The first way that I worked on my phone addiction was by treating it like the dopamine problem that it was, which means addressing it with dopamine solutions. One of my absolute favorite ways to restore dopamine balance is based off the research of Dr. Anna Lemke, who we did an episode with that I can link in the show notes. But it is basically to gently press down on the pain levers, which can counteract this pleasure-seeking element of dopamine, and it can bring our brains back into a state of balance. This is literally as easy as intentionally seeking out hard things. I aim for one hard thing a day outside of my normal work and routine. This can be a cold shower or a cold plunge. It can be a challenging crossword puzzle, or it can just be allowing for some discomfort. We live such comfort-filled lives to our own detriment. In the episode that we did together, for instance, Dr. Lemke used the example of walking in the rain with our groceries. I love this research because now when I have hard things in my life, I see them as dopamine balancing opportunities and I genuinely get excited for them. Exercise. It has been shown in study after study to help restore dopamine balance. And while there are a million reasons to work out that we have talked about on this podcast, that is one that is really motivating to me. If I stick to my regular workouts, I will be less addicted to my phone. I will feel less meh to the pleasures of everyday life. I want to keep these short solos as actionable as possible for you. So while there are other ways to balance dopamine, we have whole episodes about it. Let's stick to those two, which I personally think are the most impactful. Aim for one hard thing every single day and move your body every day. And also just that mental switch of thinking, okay, my phone addiction is at least in part a dopamine problem, and I need to approach it with dopamine solutions. That can be really helpful. Now, bestselling author Megan Heller is going to share a decision-making framework that's going to help you figure out the next best step for you. I have a real fear of wasting time. I know a lot of listeners have a real fear of wasting time. So it doesn't feel like we want to go all in on these things if they're going to not have the results that we want to have, especially as we get older and time feels more and more limited. So how do we grapple with that?
I love this question because it makes me wonder if we are wasting time by not exploring and following our curiosity and our joy and the things that may actually lead us to what we really want to be doing in our life. The way that we get to the place of maximum fulfillment, maximum joy, doing the work and living the life that we are uniquely well-suited to do and to live is by consistently taking directionally right or aligned steps in our life. If all of the steps you take are directionally right and aligned for you, wherever you end up is going to be directionally right and aligned for you. So there isn't actually the risk of not ending up where you want to be if you continue to take directionally right and aligned steps. It may not look like what you thought it was going to look like, but it's still leading you in the right direction. And that is the thing that is important about this. And I think we miss opportunities when we only think about what we can imagine the best results are going to be. So I would argue you're never wasting time if it is directionally right and aligned for you. Thinking about the scientific method for life, right? If you have a hypothesis that you start testing with experiments and the experiment proves your hypothesis wrong, that doesn't mean it was a wasted experiment. That gave you more information that allows you to construct another experiment that is better and getting you closer to the truth. When we have a hypothesis, the goal isn't to confirm our original hypothesis. It's to find out what is true. And so I think if we look at it as more of an exploration, that is never wasting time. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I still chafe at it a little bit. And I think there's this sense of like, how do we fight off this? Well, by this age, I should be here. I should be this successful. I should have these kind of status symbols, or I should have these signs of success in my life.
So I would say that all of those ways of thinking are what I would call the old paradigm, which is the destinational mindset. And that includes things like the shoulds, right? These things that actually are externally driven and not internally driven. They're not coming from your own internal navigation system or internal clock. They're coming from external sources of convention or should. So anytime you have shoulds in your language, that's a sure sign that you're not making an aligned directionally right decision and you're probably heading in the wrong direction. But it is hard because that is how we've been conditioned. We have been taught that the best way to make decisions and the best way to lead a fulfilling life is to know exactly where you're heading, know the destination, know the outcome before you begin, and predetermine a linear path exactly how to get there. And that gives you some sort of guarantee or some sort of certainty that you are on the right track and it is going to work out. The problem with that is that there actually isn't certainty. You could pick a job that you think is a sure thing, and then you blind ambition, brute force your way to that job. You make it happen. You climb the ladder and you get there. 1, it doesn't feel like what you thought it was going to feel like. 2, it may not even exist by the time you get there with so many things that are changing, and it doesn't allow for that kind of change. What we do want to do is switch the paradigm to directional thinking and this directional mindset where we realize we actually don't need to know where we're going in order to get there safely and on time.
Okay, so if we're not thinking about the big goal, how do we know what the little next steps are?
It's okay to imagine where you might want to end up as a direction. Goals are useful directions. They are not useful in terms of destinations. So in terms of something that you're getting attached to and needing certainty and guarantees, they are good as kind of a lamppost or a beacon. And then what we want to do when we're making our single next directionally right step is listen to what feels warmer and what feels colder. It's kind of all a child game of warmer and colder, where this involves getting connected to your body and your own desires, basically. But we don't need to be able to articulate the answer, what is it that I want in life, which I think is where a lot of people get stuck, is that they think they need to be able to know, here's what I want in life, or here's the timeline, here's the 10-year plan, whether that's in work or in life or children or family or houses or whatever the thing is. We think we need a plan before we can begin. But really, all we need to know is that single next step, which we judge by what feels warmer for us or colder for us. So you don't need to know this is perfect. You just need to know, do I feel more compelled in this direction or less compelled in this direction? And then you take that step and you see, okay, now that I'm here, does this feel warmer or does this feel colder? And if so, which parts feel warmer and colder? And then you move towards the next step from there. And if you continue to take those warmer steps as you go and recalibrate each time, you will end up at the warmest place possible.
Let's hear from Oliver Burkeman, the famed author of 4,000 Weeks, about what to do when you are stuck in decision paralysis. You said in the book that it's less about picking the best decision. It's about picking a decision and then like making the best of that decision.
Totally. And also that reminds me that it's also kind of more immediate and momentary than we're prone to thinking about it, right? So we're very tempted to say like, I'm choosing a path and then it's got to be that path forever. That a huge amount of this is just you're in a moment of time trying to decide what to do at, I don't know, 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. You can consult your intuition and you can have a sense of whether you are, doing something that is important to you for real, or whether you're tidying your desk for the 10th time that day because you're trying to avoid the thing that is actually really important to you, but you're a bit scared of it. And I'm still a work in progress, but I have been on a long-term shift from sort of strictly planned ways of organizing my time through to more intuitive ones. And one of the big benefits I found is that, like, you get to at least include a role for what you feel like doing, which people are very scared of, right? They think, if I just did what I felt like doing, I would just like sit on the couch and watch movies all day and eat potato chips. But actually, that's not true. And when you think about it, that's a very strange idea of oneself.
Would we say that to our friends? Would we reverse
Right,
golden rule
exactly.
and say to our friends, like, left to your own devices, you would lay on the couch and eat potato chips?
Right. So you need me to kick you in the butt all day long, right? It's made a big difference to me to be able to sort of harness that energy of what I feel like doing instead of constantly trying to oppose it, especially with like creative stuff and writing and things like that. I mean, I do need to keep doing it regularly, but catch the current of wanting to do it.
I want to talk about your writing process because I am really curious about that, and in the frame of like, how do we go after these big goals in our life? But just to dial in on the choice thing a little bit more, I think that it's really interesting, even for like larger life choices. There's a level of self-trust in being like, no matter what I choose, I can make it the best choice.
Yeah.
Versus sitting around and being like, I have to choose the absolute best thing for me to be able to handle it and have a good life.
Yeah, totally. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, we don't trust the future version of ourselves. We think like we've got to get it all right now because we don't trust that we could adapt and meet the consequences and, change course and correct course. We don't have enough trust in our future version of ourselves, but we almost have too much trust in the present version of ourselves, because how on earth are you supposed to know right now how something's going to feel a year from now? Like, you've got to make your best guess. Commitments, especially kind of relationship type commitments, really matter. They aren't to be taken lightly. But on the other hand, nobody can enter into anything if the condition for doing so is that you have to know for certain that 3 years from now you're going to feel the way you do now. I often feel like there's a certain kind of person that I am, and I have the sense that you are, and who thinks about this very seriously, and it can lead to paralyzing indecision sometimes. And then you just see people in life who just don't seem to be bothered by it at all, and just sort of like stride off into life and take on commitments or say yes to things.
You think self-trust is the difference? Do you think that they're just like, I know I can adapt to whatever this?
I think it
this
is.
path
I mean, I
goes?
think self-trust is a big part of it. Maybe there's a place where that becomes overconfidence and you should have a bit more humility. But I don't think that's the problem of anyone who's kind of fretting about this stuff like I have historically. For me, it's much more like, what is the evidence up till now? Like, the evidence up till now is that every single time something's happened in my life that wasn't exactly the way I would have wanted it, I handled it, and here I am. The evidence is pretty good that the next time something happens like that, I'll have the inner resources to cope. And yet, a lot of us move through life assuming that it's been like an incredible fluke that we managed it up till now, and that next time, that's when things will really, hit the fan.
The other thing I found very freeing that you said is that we don't have to like do something forever. You were like, just do it right now. Like, just pick something up, do it right now. You're not committing to this for the rest of your life, which is something that I very much fall prey to. I'm like, oh, if I'm going to work out today, I want it to be the most perfect workout routine so that it's not a waste of time. And then I'll do it forevermore. I feel like so many parts of your book were just screaming, like, just do something, anything, like just do anything.
No, absolutely. Obviously, we want to form lifelong practices of physical fitness and all sorts of creativity, all sorts of other things. But in the end, you only actually get there by doing it once and then doing it once again and doing it once again. We really like those techniques and approaches to self-transformation that feel like you're like seizing the reins of your life. So you're drawing up the habit tracker and you're buying the equipment and you're like, okay, I'm in the driver's seat now and the things are going to change around here. Whereas very often taking the actions that make the difference actually requires a kind of loosening of your grip on the reins. It requires you to sort of be willing to just go to the gym once and have no confidence that you're going to go back again and again and again, or be willing to, like, try writing a page of the novel you want to write with no confidence that you're going to write all the rest of it, or that people will enjoy it if you do. So we love all the stuff that is like, hey, now I'm in the driver's seat. But actually, often what's called for is the opposite. It's just like putting your toe in the water and seeing what happens.
What if we're trying to prioritize and there are so many things that are top priority that we are overwhelmed just by the bare minimum of our lives?
There are like all sorts of different approaches, and they're all sort of context specific. Obviously, on the largest, most abstract level, you can do one thing with a 20-minute period of your life. So when you see that and you really internalize what it is to have that kind of, I can do this one thing at a time, then all you need to do is to pick one thing and do that. And then later on, pick another thing and do that. There's something about that ethos of like, just do one thing at a time. We live in sequence. Time flows sequentially. There's really no point thinking about any of the things but the one you're doing. I find that a big help. I'm not going to claim that immediately eliminates the sort of stress of overwhelm. I do think that a lot of techniques, planning and productivity approaches inadvertently have this problem that they sort of constantly put in front of your face all the things you're not doing. And this is not helpful, actually. Beyond that, understanding that like there's actually always going to be many, many more things that you should usefully and importantly be doing with your time than you can. So there's that kind of, oh, all right, the plane has already crashed here, right? This thing that I was trying to keep in the air, that's not how it works. So there's that sort of relief. I think get into the habit of finishing things, which sometimes means defining a little sub part of a bigger project, but then seeing that through to the end and moving it off. Getting into this habit of what I've referred to, and other people too, as limiting your work in progress, right? Even if there are 200 things that you feel you really need to be doing at the moment, have there be 3 that are your things you're doing right now, and you're making the other ones wait in the corridor. Do them, move them on, take another 3, do them. If you can get over the initial hump of like the anxiety that's caused by making those other things wait, there's something really calming about the sort of realism of taking just a few, and you end up making faster progress overall.
Now you're going to hear from me again. I'm going to share a tool that eliminates the I'm stuck in a dull life loop. It has changed my life, and I know it's changed so many of yours as well. I've been using something called the novelty rule, and it makes life feel so much longer and so much more satisfying. It's the key to eliminating that feeling of, where did the last year go? How did I just wake up and it's 5 years later? It gets rid of that feeling like every day is the same, like you just wake up and you go to work and you watch TV while you eat dinner, and then all of the days blend together. We can't technically slow down time, although if you've figured out a way, please let me know. But we can use neuroscience to hack our brain to alter our perception of time, making it feel like we have significantly more time and our life is longer. This is based on research from Dr. David Eagleman. He is a neuroscientist from Stanford University. And basically, here is the core premise. The brain's job is to build an internal model of the world. When you run into surprises, it notes that because that's something new to add to the model, so your neural circuitry changes. But as you age, because you have seen things before, you have done them before, you're not having to change your model of the world, so you're not having to lay down new neural circuitry. So when you look back at a time where you had to learn more and you had to change your model of the world more, you remember it as longer because you had to lay down more neural circuitry. Does that make sense? Here's an analogy that might help. Picture a book and every page is a new memory. At the end of a childhood year, that book would be really long because there would be so many new memories, and your brain is making a page out of each one, again, to create that internal model of the world. But as an adult, your brain is like, oh, I saw that already. I knew that. So it's not filling those pages. And then at the end of the year, the book is super, super thin. So it's not that you experienced less time. It's that your brain perceived there to be less to remember. So you remember less time, and then you feel like the year flew by. So the point of the novelty rule is to give your brain things to fill those pages with. As a kid, everything is novel. And we've also lived literally less life. A month to a 1-year-old is literally 1/12 of their whole life, whereas a month to a 35-year-old is 1/420th of their life. So less. As we get older, a day is literally a smaller percentage of the time that we've experienced on the planet. So we need to consciously work more to create that novelty to slow down time. The secret to slowing time perception down then is to increase the novel experiences that we have. So our brain has to change its model of the world and essentially write more pages of the book. The novelty rule is designed so at the end of each year, you've created a really large, robust book, which means you will remember that year as longer and you will perceive the time of that year as slower. I've played around with how to action this science the best in terms of living our healthiest, happiest life a lot. And the structure that I have found works best for the novelty rule is once a week, I try to fit in at least one novelty activity. These can be really small. I'm going to share a whole list of ideas in just a second, but the idea is to have something to lay down that new neural circuitry so your brain is more primed to remember that week and not have our time fly by and just all blur together. So that said, here are some of my favorite weekly novelty rule ideas. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Switch your watch to your other wrist. See, these can be super, super, super tiny. You can take a different route home from work or on your after work walk. You can make a new recipe. You can try a new grocery store or farmer's market. You can check out a new restaurant or cafe. You can call a friend that you don't normally talk to. You can play a board game that you've never played. You can try a workout that you've never tried before. You can watch a TV or movie type that you would never normally watch. Like you can watch a documentary if you were normally a comedy person. Again, this is not about doing something big and different and scary. It's just about switching up the things that you are already doing, switching up these little tiny things to force your brain to lay that new neural circuitry so that you can remember the time is longer so that everything doesn't blur together. The weekly novelty rule is really about looking at the things you are already doing in your normal life and asking, what is one small tweak I can make? You're wearing clothes. How can you do that differently? You're eating food. How can you do that differently? You are commuting to work. How can you do that differently? I try to make sure that I do just one of these a week. I will ask myself on Sunday, what is my novelty rule going to be this week? And then ideally, I will make a plan and I will put it on the calendar to do it. I say this over and over and over, but what we calendar in actually happens. And if we do not calendar it in, it does not happen. Our calendars show our priorities. And so many of us say that we prioritize our health. We say that we prioritize our happiness. We say that we prioritize our relationship, but our calendars only have our work meetings. So of course, those get done while everything else falls by the wayside. I know that we all have to work, but putting your workouts, your meditation, time to call a friend, all of these things on the calendar signals to your brain that these things matter too, and it helps you make sure that they actually happen. Also, this is cool. Research shows that anticipating events can boost mood, it can boost motivation, it can boost optimism, it can decrease stress and irritability. So it is a huge life hack to always have things that you are looking forward to. And then you get the pleasure from not only the experience itself, but also days, weeks, or even months of pleasure from the anticipation. So at the beginning of the week, I will schedule in my novelty thing. And then all week, I get to look forward to watching a fun movie with Zach or meeting up with a friend for an after work walk in a neighborhood that we haven't explored yet. This is also going to play a huge role in the monthly novelty rule activities. So let's get into those right now. If the weekly novelty rule is about taking things that you are already doing and making them more novel, the monthly rule is about adding in extra novelty. These are the adventures and the activities that are going to pepper your year. So you look back and you're like, oh, wow, I went to that concert. I swam in the ocean that day. I hosted a themed dinner party this day. And all of these novel activities, these deviations from your normal life, are going to add pages to that book. So when you look back on the year, it's going to feel richer. It's going to feel more robust. It's going to feel like you literally had more time. And again, because our brains get so much pleasure from anticipation, you can use calendaring in monthly novelty rule activities to increase your joy all year long. Zach and I like to do planning sessions every 6 or 12 months. We will just open our Google calendars and we'll ask what will be our novelty rule for September, for October, for November, for December, etc. And then we will write those all in, and then we'll make sure that we have at least one for every month. And if we get more later, that's amazing, but aiming for at least one every single month. Last but certainly not least, I am sitting down with best-selling author and my dear personal friend, Tara Schuster, who addresses all of the common fears or thoughts that come up in our heads when we feel stuck in life and helps us move through them. I'm going to share some common hurdles that people run into when they're trying to figure out their goals and when they're trying to create their dream lives. And I would love to know just one piece of advice for overcoming that thing, whether it's a specific journaling practice or just any other Tara wisdom. I don't even know what I want, so I don't know how to go after it.
I bet you know way more than you think you know. Just start writing. Just go. We think we don't know anything. We don't know what we want. We don't know what we're thinking. And then we spend like 2 minutes putting what's in our heads on the paper, and we learn something about ourselves.
I feel behind in life and like I can't catch up no matter what I do.
Nobody can catch up. Everybody is upset. I just have like gotten over it. I have decided I am going to be a failure in a lot of things. So right now, I'm a failure in my house being clean. It is not. I am a failure in opening the mail. It is not going to be opened. But I am a winner in relationships, friendships, writing. I really just don't think you can be like the A+ student in everything. So I just pick. Right now, I am a failure on eating really healthy food, right? I moved like 4 times. It's okay. That's fine. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it.
What if I'm not good enough to do the thing that I actually want?
Well, that question kind of tells me you haven't tried. Like, what if? What if? Okay, fine. Who cares? Try. Like, go find out. Go see. What you learn is your fears are usually much worse than the actual reality. A lot of what I do in coaching is just bring people back to reality. Like, they're so afraid if they quit their job, they're going to lose all their money, and then they're going to be homeless, and then they're going to die, and blah, blah, right? They spiral. When in reality, if we just brought it back to reality, probably not that bad. Probably they would figure it out. So our fears of failure often, they really poison us. So I would say, don't think about like the very, very big goal. Like if I had thought about writing a book, like as the big goal, that's really hard. But if I can think about writing a chapter, just making it much, much smaller.
Or just writing.
Yeah, anything.
Literally writing a certain amount every day.
Right? So I would just say, go as incremental as you possibly can and don't worry about the big goal at the end.
I don't have the time, money, or energy to go after my big dreams.
Do you have the time, money, or energy to be on Instagram? I'm not kidding. 2 things. Harsh reality. Let me start with the harsh reality. All we have is this amount of time. So if you're not going to use it and you're not going to go after your dreams, you're never going to achieve your dreams. That's true. And so it is urgent that you live your life in a way where your life was worthwhile. You can't let, like, there are lots of problems and there's systematic injustice. We can't change the entire world. We usually can change very small things in our day, like not doom scrolling, right? Getting back some of our time from people who drain our energy. There is usually something you can do within your day to help yourself, but a lot of us don't because of learned helplessness. Over time, we've just seen, oh, I can't make my situation any better, so I won't try, which just makes your situation worse and convinces you further that you can't do anything. The number one thing I wish we all did was claim our agency a little more, that yes, the world has enormous pressure and enormous forces on us. And if this is the only time we ever get, we better try to use it pretty wisely.
I feel really stuck with a big decision I have to make.
I would lower the stakes. there just aren't that many decisions that are irreversible. So bring down the stakes and remember, like, okay, even if I choose the wrong thing, I'm probably going to learn. Like, this is my whole take on mistakes. Mistakes basically don't exist. Because if you choose quote unquote wrong, you learn something and you usually have another shot where you're going to be able to use that information. And if you make a mistake, okay, you're a human, get in line. The rest of us make mistakes all the time. So really lowering the stakes, and then those big ones like, am I going to have kids or am I not? I like to journal about those things. And I also like to remember that everybody has trouble with those really, really, really big things. But as we get to know ourselves more, like using a values filter, journaling, spending time with our ritual, with ourselves, in my experience, I have way less of those moments of like, oh, I really don't know what to do, because I just know myself a lot better.
If you want to go and listen to any of the full episodes of the ones that you've heard little snippets of here, I will link each one for you in the description. And if you want any other expert-packed episodes like this one, let me know what topic we should cover in the comments. We will make it for you. And as always, if you want to give the podcast a rating, a follow, or share it with a friend, it is so appreciated. It means so much to me, more than you know. Okay, that is all for today. I love you, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Liz Moody Podcast. Oh, just one more thing. It's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, a psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional.